All right. Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be here with all of you this morning. It's great to be here as part of the first set of workshops here for this year's conference, talking about, as you just heard from David, data decisions, career explorer, and the future of evidence-based tools workforce development. So as you heard, I'm with the state of Michigan, the Bureau of Labor Market Information Strategic Initiatives, and my partner in crime today, Ben Damaro, right? I know many of you know him as the Director of Michigan Works Southwest. And what we're here to do today is continue a conversation we actually started at this conference a year ago. So, and the topic essentially is evidence-based decision-making in workforce development. How can we promote it? What tools can we create that promote and develop evidence-based decision-making in workforce development, and the work that we're doing every single day? Now, when Ben and I were here a year ago, we were talking to you about a pilot project that we had started and we were right in the middle of. Today, we're going to talk to you about what happened with that pilot project that recently wrapped up, and we're on to the next stage now, and what do the next stages look like from here going forward. So that's pretty much what we're hoping to do today. Now, what the content of today's presentation is going to look like specifically, so we'll tell you a little bit about the Data for the American Dream project. So that's the pilot project we've been working on for over 2 years. We will talk about Career Explorer. So this is the tool that we developed with our funds from the Data for the American Dream project we've been working on for the last 2 years. So we'll talk about that Career Explorer tool after I give you a little bit of background, and I'm going to demo the tool directly. Ben is then going to talk about what's been going on at Michigan Works Southwest as far as using the tool. So they not only piloted the tool in its early stages, but they've also been using it ever since right along and since it launched earlier this year. And then we'll close out with some future enhancements that we could make. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. And then we'll have time for questions, as we were just discussing a minute ago. So that's the agenda for this workshop. And I'll just go ahead and get into a little bit of background. So like I said, there was this initiative that started more than 2 years ago. I think it was probably closer to like 2.5. It was announced, and it was called Data for the American Dream, D4AD for short. And what this initiative was focused on, so it was this big call that was put out, basically an RFP for funds saying this is the goal of Data for the American Dream, which was philanthropically funded largely by Schmidt Futures. So if you've heard of Eric Schmidt of Google, that's his philanthropy, and largely funded by Schmidt Futures. And the goal was basically to take some target populations, particular individuals that were low income, lower skilled, underemployed, unemployed individuals, right? How can we get them into better jobs and better education opportunities? But even more specifically, how do we use data to make that happen, to facilitate that process and get these individuals into a better situation, into sustainable employment? So that was the goal that was announced. So there was this big call. And so, of course, there are several partners here in Michigan. We said, that's what we've been trying to do for a long time. So maybe this is our opportunity to take that forward. And so several partners got together, a couple of different groups here at the state. So, of course, the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, that I know everybody here is familiar with. Also, the Department of Technology Management and Budget. So that's the department that I'm in, as well as a lot of our IT folks at the state. Of course, Ben's group, Michigan Works Southwest, was involved, and then their parent organization, the Upjohn Institute for Employment Research, and then the U.S. Department of Labor Training Administration. We had some additional funds through there, but these partners got together and said, what can we do? Like, what kind of an opportunity could we create with these funds, as we thought about, well, what's our proposal going to look like? And so what we wanted to focus on when we went through this process was to create an intelligent workforce system. And so by that, we mean, like, we know, right, that there's systems out there already, but we know they can work better than they do. There's ways we can use the data available in those systems to help our partners in workforce development, many of you on this call right now, right, to help you make better decisions as you work with job seekers. And so we wanted to create that intelligent workforce system. And this is something that Upjohn piloted, over 20 years ago in the state of Georgia. And so we wanted to build on everything that was learned in that process with everything that we've gained as far as knowledge over the last 20 years. We want to assist these underrepresented low-income individuals making that transition to sustainable employment. And importantly, we wanted to provide some data-driven, personalized support to those individuals, right? To really make it as specific and as personalized as possible. So with that being our goal, right, that's what we did. We submitted our proposal, and the proposal more specifically said we're going to create some tools that create these personalized recommendations. We want to improve the labor market success of the job seekers we're working with. And we wanted to focus on two user groups, both case managers at our Michigan Works offices, as well as job seekers themselves. So what we're going to show today is this tool we developed called Career Explorer. There's going to be two slightly different versions of it. One is for the case managers, the other for the job seekers. But so I think it was, like I said, about 2.5 years ago, we put this proposal together based off of those few criteria, and we submitted it along with, I can't remember how many other submissions. I think there was 60 or 70, something like that. And Michigan was one of 3 states that were selected. So New Jersey and Colorado being the other 2. And so we were the 3 states that were selected as winners of this these grant funds. And so we took those grant funds, and that was, I think, in July of 19, we found out we were going to get it. We started the project officially in September of 19. So about 2 years ago, right on the nose. And we've been doing a lot of work over the last 2 years. And you heard a little bit, if you were, attended this panel a year ago with Ben and I, you heard kind of where things were right in the middle, in the thick of things. Now, again, we're here to show you where it ended up and how we can move forward. So what does this Career Explorer tool do? So really the source of innovation for this tool is the data. So if you're on this call, you probably know what Osmus is, right? You know that this is our data, and you know that Osmus has a lot of data. There's a lot of data that goes into Osmus. And so there's a lot of administrative data in that Osmus system that can be used to help create these personalized recommendations for job seekers. Pure Michigan Talent Connect is another platform that we have that we use that also has, doesn't have as much data as Osmus, of course, but it does have some that we can still use. So that's really where the innovation comes from, is all the rich data that's available in these systems. That administrative data, right, that's what allows us to create the personalized recommendations and enhances that process of serving participants, and enhances a word that we use very intentionally, right? Because we know, as I'm about to show you this tool, right, it's meant to help the case managers that are on the ground doing this work every day. It's not meant to in any way replace the work that they're doing, because nobody knows how to help job seekers better than the staff at Michigan Works. We just tried to create a tool that would be another tool in your toolbox to help these individuals out. So what does it use? So it depends on the parts of the tool, as you're about to see. There are some functions of the tool that use artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms to generate information to, again, help make decisions, particularly around training opportunities. But another key thing this does, in addition to making those recommendations, those personalized recommendations, it brings a lot of things together into one place. So it used to be the case, right? Well, still is the case. We've got data in a number of different systems, right? You've got labor market data available from my office, for instance. You've got job posting data on Pure Michigan Talent Connect. You've got training opportunities on Training Connect. So we know that there's these things that are all over a number of different systems. You got more information on Pathfinder, for instance. We try to bring that all together in one place to make it easier for those users, especially case managers, job seekers, right, to get at all that information and help make those decisions in a much more efficient manner. So the last thing I guess I want to point out before we get into any kind of extensive demo of the tool is that we took a human-centered design development approach to this. So we could put the best information in the world together. If it's not available in a user-friendly format, in an accessible format, in a way that people want to use, then we haven't done a good job, and it's not going to get out there and be used, right? So that was really important to us from the beginning, was to have this human-centered design development approach. And so obviously when we started this, COVID was not a thing yet. We didn't have a pandemic. And so we had to change our approach on that a little bit as we went, but we worked really closely, as I said, with Ben's team and got some really strong feedback on the tool as we went along, and we made changes. We made revisions to the tool throughout that development process based on the feedback to make sure we were designing this in a way that was as useful as possible for case managers, for mission work staff. So that's the background on the tool itself. I think from here we can move on to a tool demonstration. So just give me 1 second, and I am going to switch the screen that I'm sharing while I demo the tool. Okay, so for those of you, I'm guessing if you're on here, then a lot of you are familiar with Osmos environment. So, sorry, give me 1 second.
So while we're waiting, we did have a question if individuals could get a copy of the presentation, and this will be available, correct, Dave?
It says we're recording.
Yes.
Okay.
Either way, we can make this available.
And it's like,
Yeah.
Sure.
I apologize. I had to unmute myself. Yeah, as far as I know, it's not going to be an issue at all.
Okay.
It's going to serve its greater purpose by getting it out there for sure.
Right. All right. So what we're looking at here is, this is an Osmos. We're in the Osmos dashboard. This is, of course, a test case, right? This is no specific individual's information we'll be sharing here. But before the Career Explorer tool was launched, you would get somebody's name here. You could hear, look at their programs, things like that, but you couldn't click on their name. To use the tool now, you just click on the individual's name that you're serving, and you'll see a number of things that pop up. So you get some basic information on the job seeker that you're serving over here on the left. But this first page, so there's 3 pages here. You can see there's a user profile page, there's a reemployment info, and then there's pathways. And I'll talk about each of these in turn. So the first page here on the user profile, you see it says benefits of training. Now, this is the main thing we focused on from a predictive standpoint of using those machine learning algorithms. And this is something that's only available to case managers. This is not something that a job seeker has access to, as this is built on the Osmos platform, not PMTC. This is using Osmos data. And it does a few different things. One is based off, so this is available for a handful of programs. So individuals in the adult program and the dislocated worker program or the PATH program. Those are the 3 programs this portion of the tool serves right now, as far as making any kind of training recommendations. But what it does is it says, okay, based off the characteristics of the individual I'm working with, number of things, but in particular, of course, looking at their employment history, their wage history, looking at their level of education, what area of the state they're in, all that kind of stuff, right? It takes that into account. And so, okay, so if we look at similar individuals to the person I'm working with right now, what do their outcomes look like if they got training or if they didn't? And we can see based off this first chart, right, it's about an almost 10 percentage point bump in their ability to find a job. So this is the first thing we look at, is just looking at employment, right? So we can see there's about almost a 10 percentage point bump in employment for individuals that got training versus did not get training, again, with similar characteristics of the individual that you're serving. What about wages? What does that look like if they get training? So in the case of this, again, it's a test case here. For our test case, it looks like it's over $800 a year would be the wage premium we would expect, again, looking at similar individuals that share characteristics with this person that we're serving. And then the final thing we look at on this first page is their training outlook, which is what's the probability that they can complete training their own. So we can see this person has an 88% chance of completing that training. That's pretty typical. And the reason, one of the reasons this is so important, right, it's not to identify individuals that won't, it's to help us identify those individuals that might need some extra assistance getting them across the finish line, right? Who needs some support services to make sure they can complete that training. So again, this is all information available to case managers only. This is not something that's available to the job seeker. If we go to the reemployment info page, what this is doing is, this is what we kind of informally refer to as the reality check page. So this is to help individuals say, okay, if this individual decides to not pursue any kind of education or training, this is what their labor market experience is going to look like. So what this is showing is reemployment outlook. So again, these top two things here are predictive in nature, using those machine learning algorithms. You can see that 53% chance of finding a job in the next 6 months, right? Amount of time we would expect this person to take to find a job, about 4 to 8 months. You can see that 53%, it's a little below average. The 4 to 8 months to find a job, that's about typical. So that is where it ends, though, as far as the stuff that is only available to case managers. So again, this is all to help provide extra information for them to make decisions on how best to serve an individual. Everything else from here on out is going to be available not just in the Osmus version of the tool that I'm in now, but also in the Pure Michigan Talent Connect version of the tool that's available to job seekers. So everything else, right, the non-predictive components here are going to be available to the job seekers as well. So if we look at, again, this individual. So many of you know, like in Osmus or PMTC, there's a field that identifies someone's current or most recent occupation. It comes preloaded into the system. We pull from that field. So somebody is immediately looking at information related to their past job or current job. And so what this initial information here is meant to show is just purely looking at things like wages in particular. The job that I'm trained for, how does it pay relative to jobs in my area? So we can see in this case, one of the big pieces of feedback we got throughout the development process was wanted things to be as local as possible. And so that's something we tried really hard to do. And you can see that this is by region. So we're looking at information for the region. You can change this region if you want. You can also view statewide, but this person's test case, it's in the Lansing area. And then we can see that the for light truck drivers, right? So this is in the case of this test case, light truck driver is their current or most recent occupation. We can see that this occupation pays fairly similarly when we're looking at starting wages, but the more experienced we get with those wages, the less it does relative to a typical wage in the area. You can see that just kind of on a 100-point scale, that this doesn't perform particularly well, 18 out of 100. There are 160 projected annual openings and a fairly large projected job growth rate, but wages are not particularly high for this occupation. If this was not a test case, we'd have some information here on what the individual's previous income was. Also comes loaded. You can click here, get additional information about light truck drivers. If you want to dig in a little more, this takes you directly to ONET. Let's say this person decides they want to stick with that. We have jobs live coming from Pure Michigan Talent Connect posted in the tool locally. It would say this person's in the Lansing area. You can see these jobs are from Lansing. So these are just the first 3 postings that pop up. If you want to look at more than that, you can just click view all employment opportunities and it will pull up many more that are in Pure Michigan Talent Connect. So again, this is meant to show somebody if they choose not to pursue any kind of education and training, this is what they can expect as far as what they would make in their local labor market. If they decide they want to move forward and pursue some kind of education or training, then we click on the pathways, the third and final piece here. And this is where you can seek out new opportunities. Now, there are a few ways to do this. One is that you can look at, if you don't know where to even start, right? You can look down here, and if you've seen our career outlook, you recognize these categories. As we go from left to right, it's increasing amounts of required education and training for these jobs. But we can see that there's jobs listed for every category here, from short-term training, less than a month of training, all the way up to a bachelor's degree or higher. If it is highlighted, if it's a bold, but if it's bold text, that means it's an occupation that's related to their previous occupation using ONET definitions of related occupations. So you could pick any of these that you wanted, or you can type something in up here. You can search by occupation. You can search by an education path as well. So let's say somebody was interested in nursing, then we can go ahead and look at some nursing options. So registered nursing, of course, very popular, well-paid occupation, but you can look at this right now and say, okay, so if I look at registered nursing, this is the same setup we saw on a previous screen. You can see that registered nurses make much more than what the typical wage is, especially at these starting wages. Once you get up to more experience, the premium is less, but it's still higher. So you can see that, very high wages. The wage score is now 82 out of 100 rather than 18. 265 projected annual openings, 13% projected job growth. Right. So this is all information to help make a decision about registered nursing. You can see down here, there's some educational opportunities. These are coming direct from Training Connect, if they're available in there, or from Pathfinder, if they're not. Also, employment opportunities, jobs listed again in the area. You can see that we've got some stuff here from East Lansing, right? All jobs in the Lansing area. There's a comparison feature as well that's important. So if somebody wants to, they're looking at a new job, they want to compare it to their past job, you can just click that. And you can see you've got a direct comparison. If you recall, the past job for this individual was a light truck driver. We're going to compare that to a registered nurse. We can get a head-to-head comparison on wages, growth rates, openings, wages, right? You can see that, unsurprisingly, a registered nurse does better on all those. Maybe that's not the comparison you want to make. Maybe you want to try something else. So we can compare to other jobs as well. And we can just search out another one. So again, let's say somebody's interested in healthcare. Maybe they don't want to put in quite as much time, at least at this point. So they want to look at an LPN option instead of an RN. Then you can make a direct comparison between RNs and LPNs, again, in your area, and see that while LPNs are making as much as registered nurses, they are making more than what's typical starting and intermediate wages in the area. And so maybe somebody decides, that's what I want to pursue. Educational opportunities, if we go to LPNs, you can see, for instance, we just click on this option from Jackson College, gives you some information, pulling from Training Connect, tells you what the income is of individuals that complete this program, credential attain rate, all that stuff. And if you want more details, you can just click this and it will take you directly to the page in Training Connect where this program is listed. So, and if we go back, I think there's just one other feature I want to highlight before I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Ben. But if we look here, again, there's not just educational opportunities, also the job opportunities if you want to look up jobs for either of these. And then finally, there's a print function here. We know sometimes things are a little different right now, and we're all trying to figure out what's the best approach is for working with job seekers, given what's going on with COVID. But sometimes it's good to have something physical, not on a screen. So we have a print function that takes all this and formats it in a way where you can look at these comparisons just like you did on the screen for both jobs that you're looking at. In this case, LPN, RN, you can print that out, share that, email it, whatever you think is best. So that pretty much wraps up the demo that I wanted to provide for everyone. I think what I'll do now is I'm going to stop sharing one more time and go back to our slides, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Ben. So as I said, we had this pilot project going on over the course of the last year, 2 years really, but we really got into it over the last year, and then the tool launched for everybody back in June. And so I'm going to go ahead, pull up some slides one more time, and then I'll turn things over to Ben to discuss how things are going in Southwest.
Scott, are you able to answer a couple of questions now, or do you want me to wait until Ben is done?
Why don't we go ahead and wait till Ben's done? Let's go ahead and I think we'll have plenty of time.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you, Scott. Outstanding demo. And I just really want to thank Scott and Ruth Archer and the entire LMI team for their thoughtfulness and consideration in making modifications to the tool while we piloted it. It was just a very iterative process, and they're a great partner over the course of the past couple of years. So I'll be sharing information from our staff and customers' perspectives. As you can see on this slide, we've incorporated using the Career Explorer tool into our career coaches service delivery. So in this example, you can see that we had a participant, staff member who was working with a participant who primarily had production, manufacturing experience. And after reviewing the output from the tool, they saw that the medical field had a bright outlook, and that was in alignment with the customer's interests. So she decided that she would like to pursue training in phlebotomy, which is a great occupation that will lead to higher wages than the manufacturing field. And in the next slide, as Scott mentioned, this is taking data. The Career Explorer is taking data from a number of different areas. So you have OSMIS, you have PMTC, you have MITC, and you have Pathfinder, which are all great tools. But what Career Explorer does is bring those all together. So what we've heard from our staff, as you'll see here, they've really appreciated the multiple pathways that it shows. As Scott just demoed, you can look at different careers and different fields to make the best decision for the customer. And in the next slide, you'll see some feedback from our customers. So in this example, the individual was just really appreciated the information that was provided in terms of training and the listing of local job opportunities. As Scott mentioned, that was a lot of the feedback that we received. The more local that we could make it for the tool, the more beneficial that was to the customers. And in this final slide, you'll see our first success story from using the Career Explorer tool. So we had staff working with participant Candace, met with her several times and utilized the tool. From that, we saw that Great Start quality training certification would be the best path for her, which she did and completed, and then found employment at our local YMCA Child Care Center. And right after she gained employment, she quickly received a promotion as well, and now she's assisting with grant writing. So overall, you can see the tool has been very beneficial to both our staff and customers. And I would just really encourage everyone to ensure that you're utilizing the tool, that staff are aware of it, that job seekers are aware of it, because I think it's going to provide us with tremendous value in the decision-making process. So thank you, Scott. Oh, did you want me to cover this one, Scott? I'm sorry. So we did discuss ongoing implementation. Obviously, over the past few months, we just haven't seen the traffic that we once saw prior to the pandemic. So we're really hoping that's going to increase in the coming months. Obviously, with the PATH re-engagement occurring this month, individuals who are on extended federal unemployment are no longer receiving those payments. So we're expecting, hopefully they'll get back into the workforce as well. So more opportunities to continue to utilize the tool and moving forward.
Right. All right. Thanks, Ben. Okay, so I've just got a few more comments to make about things that we could do looking forward, and then we can go ahead and we can open it up for questions after that, and we got some coming in. So, as Ben said, I guess there's a few things to think about. So as Ben said, right, there's a lot of challenges right now with the COVID environment, and so, but there's also a lot of opportunities, we think, to really take advantage of the benefits of these tools, both for the case managers and the job seekers. So just again, right, I've shown you the OSMIS version of this. It's also on PMTC now, which I'm guessing many of you have already seen. But so, whether it's using those in your resource rooms or when you're working one-on-one, right, there's a lot of opportunities. And we're so happy to have that conversation if you have feedback about what's working, what's not. So, I are involved with regular meetings of Michigan Works groups. I know a lot of you are as well. So if you're involved with any of those groups, like MIS user groups or the planners group or anything like that, right? And you want to share information about what's working, what's not. You want us to maybe join a call with you to talk about it. We're happy to do that. Just reach out and let us know. So that's kind of the right now. The last thing I want to talk about before we go to questions is just talking a little bit about what we could do in the future. So one thing we could do, so as you saw already, the tool, when it comes to any kind of personalized recommendations that it's making, it's focused on training. And that's for a number of reasons. One of those is we know that that's something that's an important decision point, right? Especially in the WIOA world, post WIA world, right, where we don't have to go through those steps of getting training, right? We can get somebody directly in training if we want to. We don't have to go through core and intensive services first, right? So we know it's an important decision point for a lot of job seekers. It's also the case, though, that once we got into working with the data, right, that from a data quality perspective, right, like what's in there consistently, there's really good data inside of Osmos on training. What we hoped to do originally, and now it's going to be something we're looking to do more for the future, is looking beyond training. So looking at a lot of those, not just the staff assisted, but also those those services that individuals get when they come into a Michigan Works office, like whether you're, if it's a job club or if it's a, looking at LMI or reviewing LMI, right? Those things that are in Osmos, but we know it's not necessarily convenient. And we found that out, right? Working with Ben's team over time, right? Osmos, it's old. We know that, right? It's a 20-year-old system. And, human-centered design was not really at the top of anybody's list over 20 years ago, I don't think. So we know there's constraints there. However, I guess one thing I just wanted to call attention to is that if it can be the case where we can get to a point where we can consistently enter the data on what services and activities individuals are participating in, then that means we could get to a point where we could incorporate that into the tool in the future, making recommendations on those different services and activities that are available through Michigan Works. But as it stands now, like I said, I know that putting the data into Osmos, it takes extra work to record all those services and activities. It's not mandatory, right? But if we could do that, we can make better recommendations for more of those services and activities. Another thing we could do, right, is to provide information reports on what services and activities are people in each region or in each office, for that matter, accessing, which ones are they not accessing? How does that compare to the state overall, right? So providing information to our Michigan Works partners on what are your staff doing versus other staff across the state, and talking about what's working, what's not working, right? So we could provide those reports, but again, we'd have to get to a point where the data is being entered consistently. And we know from working with it, right, that that's just not the case right now across all regions. So something to consider for the future. We can do, there's a lot of exciting possibilities there, but we would have to have more conversations about what we can do to improve the data quality and the data entry. The last thing I'll say before we go ahead and start opening things up for questions is there are resources available. So whether it's the Osmos version of the tool or it's the PMTC version of Career Explorer, either way, there are user guides available for both of these. So those resources are available. You can go to the course PMTC. There's information on there now. Also the Osmos version. So the resources are there. And of course, right, I think everybody's familiar with the normal channels that you have for reaching out to the Osmos team or the PMTC team whenever you have questions. So that's also available. So with that, that's the last we have as far as slides go. So I think we can go ahead and start looking into those questions, Dave.
Yeah, there are a couple that are in the chat box. I don't know if you want me to read them out for everyone to hear, or if you want to look in the chat box. I also want to let you know that I'm putting into the chat box now a survey. Hold off to the end if you would to complete it, but it'll be there. It'll be at the very bottom, so it'll be easy to find. And there it is.
Okay.
Scott, you want me to go ahead and
I got them. I think I see them now. So
yeah,
sorry for
Kara and Ryan. Yeah.
Yep. So is the tool pulling information just from ONET code entered on the registration screen or from the work history section in ISS? So it's the former. So it is that field that gets entered. So in the case of Osmus, right, it's that registration field. In the case of PMTC, when somebody creates their profile, there is a field now that says, what's your mandatory, your current or most recent occupation. If they set up their profile a while back, then it's now prompts them to enter that field. So that's where it's pulling from. We know a lot of great information is in the ISS, Kara, so it's not that we ignored that or anything, but the problem is because it's entered, it's open text, right? It's it's not formatted. So it's not really in a way that we can work with very easily. So, but that's something we're, thinking about for the future is how can we get the great information that is in the ISS into a more structured format where we could use it. We had a question from Ryan, what factors would lead to someone having a lower score and likelihood to complete training? So there's a number of factors on that, Ryan, as far as, so the question is, any of those, I think this goes beyond the likelihood to complete training. It's everything that are in those predictive categories. So it's going to be lots of different things. So one thing it's not is, just like if any of you are familiar with the worker profiling model that UI uses, for instance, right, there are 3 things that are not supposed to be, can't be in that model, and that's race, it's gender, and it's age. And those things are not in our models either, right? We're very committed to equity, and we know many of you have probably read about how predictive algorithms sometimes reinforce inequities, and we test the algorithms for that. We have a whole process we go through to make sure we're not reinforcing any of those things. So that's part of the process we go through. So I just want to make sure, I should have made that part of the presentation. I apologize. But as far as what does go into it, so it's things like, could be some local features like what's your local unemployment rate, but it's also going to be a lot of stuff particular to the individual, like what's their level of educational attainment, what are their barriers to employment, what's their wage and employment history look like. So all those things go into the model. And if you want a little more detail on that, we do discuss that somewhat in the user guides. All right, so I'm notoriously bad at reading comments and talking at the same time.
I can help you out, Scott.
Okay,
so, next question that we have is, what if they have no work history?
If they have no work history, then it's just going to be, it's going to look at similar Ben, right? It's all about trying to compare them to similar individuals. So if they don't have work history, then anything that gets put in there, it's going to be, they're not the only ones that have work history, right? So it's going to take the things that they do have, but and it's just going to make the comparisons based on those fields.
And the next question, I think you answered in the previous one, but they're asking, how does Career Explorer define the term similar individual? What information does the program use to determine that individuals are similar? So I believe you did address that one. Yeah. The next question we have, is there going to be a way for case managers to enter more ONET codes in registration to account for a varied work history, or would we just encourage the participant to update their PMTC profile to include those other ONET codes?
That's a great question, Kara, and something I should have demonstrated in the demo, but I didn't. So where it comes preloaded from Osmus or PMTC, that's actually a drop-down. So if you think, if that turns out that's not up to date, that's not correct, right? You can just pull it down and put in the correct occupation right there, and it'll just load it up.
Perfect. And then the last question that we have right now from Suzanne, are the schools and programs suggested in the comparison also on the approved list of training programs in the Career Explorer Michigan Training Connect within PMTC, which makes them eligible for WIOA funding?
I think for the spirit of your question, Suzanne, the answer would be yes. So because we're pulling from Pure Michigan Training Connect, which is the eligible training provider list. So the only reason I'm hedging a bit is because it also pulls in programs from Pathfinder. So like, let's say somebody's looking at something that's, they're interested in, I guess I don't know for sure. I'm making a guess. I shouldn't probably do that, but let's say there's a 4-year program, right? It's going to be linked with like registered nursing, for instance, right? It might not be on the ETPL, but it's going to be in there. It's going to pull it in from Pathfinder as opposed to Training Connect, maybe. So those are going to be in there too. But yeah, if it's on there, it's coming from Training Connect. Training Connect is the eligible training provider list.
Yeah, and I would also say if there's a training program that's pulled from Pathfinder that's not on Training Connect, please work with your, whether that be a 4-year university or community college, to get them on Training Connect. I believe that's all the questions at this point. Mark actually has a question now. Going back to my earlier question, so wage, employment history, barriers, zip code, this all goes into the definition. Anything else?
I don't think we get so specific as zip code, Mark. I want it because it's always a balancing act with, you want to make sure you've got enough data there, right? And zip code is very specific, and there's not much else we can do. I do believe we use county in the model, but yeah, there are other things too, right? So like I said, I would encourage you to check out the user guides.
All right. Any other questions?
Just compliments, which are nice, right?
Thank you, Kara.
Better than tomatoes. Yeah.
Right. So I guess, yeah, thumbs up and applauses. I like it. So this ends the presentation for these gentlemen, and thank you very much. Thank you for putting up with my interesting start, but we appreciate everyone's time. Thank you. I hope you have some great takeaways from this presentation. Feel free to take some time off before the next presentations at 1, and video chat with any of the exhibitors that are out there, and or break out and meet a couple new people with that function as well. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Scott. And the rest of you have a great, oh wait, Kristen has a question here at the very end. Will WIOA youth base or youth be added for case managers working with the program?
It's something we're considering. Can't make any promises, Kristen, but we know there's been others. The programs that we don't have included, there's been questions about, so we'll keep looking into that for sure. But if there's a demand for it, then make that known. That helps the case.
Yeah, that's great. I work with Kristen. She's very thorough. So we'll give her one more second to ask a question, and then we'll let you go. Thank you so much. Don't forget the survey. It's up a little bit higher in the chat box. We'd appreciate that feedback.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.